In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the TI84 graphing calculator and StatCrunch in order to find the mean and standard deviation for data that is grouped into classes. So here we have a set of data. This is representing a population of male and female humpback whales, and we are wanting to determine the mean and standard deviation for both males and females for this classified data. So to do this, we're going to begin by finding the midpoints of each of the classes. Now, the technique that we used for midpoints is to average the lower class limit of the class that we're looking for the midpoint for with the lower class limit of the next consecutive class. So in other words, we're going to find the mean of 0 and 10, which would be 5, and that is the midpoint of the first class. Then for the second class, we're going to find the mean of 10 and 20, which would give us a mean of 15. Now, to use the TI84 to find the mean, we're going to enter the midpoints for the classes in list 1, and we're going to enter the frequencies in second list, list 2, and so we're going to enter the male frequencies in list 2. So to do this, we're going to first go to the lists, which we do by selecting Stat and Edit. This gives us the lists. So down list 1, we're going to enter the class midpoints. Now again, for the first class, the midpoint's 5. Second class, the midpoint's 15. Third class, the midpoint's 25. Next class, 35. And 45, 55, 65, and 75. So I now have all the class midpoints entered. Note that the 75 comes from averaging 70 with 80, which would be the beginning of the next class if there was a next class. Now we're going to enter the frequencies for the male humpback whales down list 2, keeping them corresponding to the appropriate midpoint. Now, it's always a good idea to double check your data, so I've made a typo here. This should be 22, then 24, 18, and 15. Always very wise to double check your data because errors will cause problems for us down the road. Now that I have the midpoints in list 1 and the frequencies in list 2, I'm going to go back to the home screen by selecting Second and Quit. Now I'm going to choose Stat and the Calc menu, and we're going to calculate one variable statistics. Now, behind one variable statistics, we're going to enter L1, comma, L2. So what we're telling the calculator is that the data values are in list 1 and the frequencies are in list 2. So essentially we're using the midpoints as the data values, and then the frequencies from list 2 tells the calculator how many times that data value is occurring. When I select Enter, it tells us that the mean is 43.0291978, and this is a population of data, so the standard deviation is 20.81687328. So let's enter those values into our answer boxes. So our mean is telling us to round to 2 places, so it is 43.03. Good job. And the standard deviation rounded to 2 places is 20.82. Fantastic. So now it's asking us to find the population mean and standard deviation for the females. So to do this, we need to also enter the frequencies for females in the list. Now, we could have done this from the beginning. I'm going to go to Stat and Edit, and I'm going to enter the data for females into list 3. So entering 10 and 7, 20, or rather 16, 20, 23, 21, 17, and 12 down list 3. So now I have the midpoints for the ages in list 1 and the frequencies for the female whales in list 3. Again, go back to the home screen, Stat, Calc, one variable statistics, This time I have the midpoints in list 1, comma, and I have the frequencies in list 3. So the mean for females is 43.25 if we round to 2 places, and the population standard deviation is 19.92 if we round to 2 places. So entering these answers, now again technically we have a mu because this is a population, 43.25, fantastic, and the population standard deviation 19.92, well done. Now we can continue the rest of this problem, but the point of this video is that I also want to show you how to use StatCrunch in addition to the calculator to find the mean and standard deviation for group data. So I'm going to select this icon and I'm going to open in StatCrunch. So by doing this, the calculator preloads StatCrunch with the data from our exercise. Otherwise, I would have to enter it myself. Now, StatCrunch is built with the capability of being able to find the mean and standard deviation for grouped data such as this. So to do this, we're going to select Stat, Summary Statistics, and now the data that we have is grouped into classes, or this is also referred to as binned data. So I'm going to select that. So it asks me what is the variable where we have the binned data, and for our problem that is the ages. So I'm going to select ages, and then it asks us where's the counts or frequencies. And so if we do this for the male whales, that would give me the results for males. Now we have two different options for how midpoints are computed. The first option will compute the midpoints by using the average of the lower limit and the upper limit. This is not what we have been doing in our course. Instead, we are finding the averages of the consecutive lower limits, so we're going to select that option. Another issue is that this particular problem has populations of data rather than samples of data, but the pre-selected statistics will find the mean and the standard deviation for a sample, as if this is a sample. So I'm going to just select mean and have the StatCrunch compute the mean, and then I'm going to come down and select unadjusted standard deviation. So this will give us the computation for a population rather than for a sample. Now when I select compute, the result that I obtain is a mean of 42.97 and a standard deviation of 20.73. Now if you look at the results we obtained for male whales, we had a mean of 43.03 and a standard deviation of 20.82. So there is a slight discrepancy between the result we obtained with our calculator and the result we're obtaining from StatCrunch. Now we can fix this. The reason that this is happening is because StatCrunch is, even though we've selected consecutive lower class limits, StatCrunch is using a midpoint of 0 between 0 and 10, which is 5, between 10 and 20, which is 15, as we did. But for the last class, StatCrunch has a problem. It's finding a midpoint for 70 and 79 instead of 70 and 80, as we did before. So we can fix this problem by adding in another class that does not have any data values. So I'm entering 80 to 89, that would be the next class if we had data, and then the frequencies of 0. And this will compensate and give us the same results that we got with our calculator. So now if I do summary stats and grouped bin data, the ages are the ages, the age ranges for our whales, and for males, selecting consecutive lower class limits, mean, and unadjusted standard deviation. When I compute, I get a result of 43.03, which is the same as the result we obtained with our calculators, and I get the result 20.82 when I round to 2 places, the same result that we got with our calculator. We can also find the results for for the female whales in the same way. So stat, summary stats, columns. This time we are going to, let me back up. I selected the wrong thing. Stat and summary stats, we're going to choose grouped in bin data. We have the ages in the bins, and we have females this time. We're selecting consecutive lower class limits. We want to find the mean and the unadjusted standard deviation. This gives us the results of 43.25 and 19.92, which agrees with our results from the calculator. So there we have used StatCrunch to get the same results. So again, the trick here will be to add this this next class, and that way there's no discrepancy between the calculator and StatCrunch and with the way we would compute it by hand. Incidentally, there's nothing wrong with the way StatCrunch is doing this. We are getting a good estimate, so if we did not add this last group, it wouldn't be a problem. It's just that we're getting slight discrepancies because of that. Which gender has the higher mean age? Well, males had a mean age of 43.03, females had 43.25 for a mean, so females have a slightly higher mean age. Which gender has a higher dispersion? Well, we can tell this from the standard deviation. Male whales have a standard deviation of 20.82, females has a standard deviation of 19.92, and so males have a slightly higher dispersion. And that finishes our exercise.